Hey everyone, and welcome! Today we are tackling a huge and very, very human problem, but with a surprisingly futuristic solution. The question we're digging into is a big one. In an age where so many of us feel isolated, could our future best friends be, well, built instead of born? Can robots actually cure loneliness? So here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to get a handle on just how big this loneliness epidemic really is. Then, we'll introduce the technology that's been designed to fight it. We'll look at the hard science, the actual tests, then explore how these things actually build emotional bonds. And finally, we'll ask the big question: what does this all mean for the future of friendship itself?
All right, let's start with the problem. Loneliness. It isn't just a bad mood or a fleeting feeling. Researchers are now looking at this as a full-blown public health crisis. It has serious, measurable consequences for our health, especially as the world's population gets older. And this is not an exaggeration. The scientific community is taking this incredibly seriously. This quote from a major aging journal says it all. Loneliness is being linked to an increased risk for everything from heart disease to dementia. It's a quiet crisis, for sure, but a really critical one.
But here's something you might not realize. Loneliness isn't just one simple thing. Researchers actually break it down into two different types. You've got social loneliness on one hand. That's the lack of a social circle, the thing that leads to boredom. But then you have emotional loneliness, and that's the absence of a really deep, close connection. That's what causes the real anxiety and distress. And knowing this difference is absolutely key to understanding how a robot could ever hope to help.
Okay, so we've got this massive, very human problem clearly defined. Now, let's pivot to the solution. And it's not what you'd think. It's not a new community center or some new pill. It's something that feels like it's pulled right out of a sci-fi movie. A robotic companion. So when we say companion robot, what are we actually talking about? Well, it's not an industrial arm on an assembly line or even a smart speaker. The whole point of these things is to interact with us, with people, in a social way. They are designed from the ground up to provide that sense of companionship, bridging the gap between being just a tool and, well, a friend. All right, let's meet the star of our story today, Boko Imo. This little guy was at the very center of a major study in Japan. And what makes it so special is that its conversations weren't just some pre-programmed AI. They were actually guided by trained human operators, which allowed for real, empathetic, and personalized responses. Pretty cool, right? Okay, so a cute robot is one thing, but does it actually work? This is where we get into the real science of it all and see if this thing could actually make an impact in the real world. So here's how the experiment worked. Researchers in Japan set up a proper randomized controlled trial. They found 73 older adults who all lived alone and said they felt lonely. Then they split them into two groups. One group got to live with a Boko Imo robot for 4 weeks. The other group, the control group, didn't. And before and after, they measured everyone's levels of loneliness and general well-being. And this, of course, brings us to the million-dollar question. After 4 weeks of chatting and getting reminders from this little robot, did it actually make a difference? And the answer was a huge yes. Look at this. The group that had the robot saw their loneliness scores drop by an average of 3.7 points. The control group, almost no change at all. In scientific terms, that is a massive success. The robots were actually working. And get this, the benefits went beyond just loneliness. The robot group also saw a nearly 2-point jump in their overall psychological well-being scores. So they didn't just feel less lonely, they actually felt genuinely better. The numbers are pretty stunning, but they don't really tell the whole story. How did a little piece of technology do this? Let's peel back the layers and look at the human stories behind the data. This quote from an 84-year-old participant, it really gets to the heart of it. Sometimes it wasn't even about an active conversation, just the robot's presence. The feeling that you're not totally alone in the house was enough to bring a sense of calm and companionship. And for others, the interactions were deeply personal, deeply supportive. Take this 77-year-old woman who was dealing with the grief of losing her husband. For her, the robot became a source of daily encouragement, a consistent, supportive little voice during an incredibly tough time. So when the researchers looked at all the feedback, they saw that the benefits really fell into 4 main categories. Yeah, there was the obvious one, emotional support. But it also provided practical lifestyle assistance, like medication reminders. And this is interesting. It actually spurred social interaction with other people because everyone wanted to talk about their new robot. And finally, it offered cognitive stimulation with little quizzes and fun facts.
Okay, so we see all these different benefits, but how does that all add up to something that feels like, well, like a real relationship? The research gives us a really smart way to think about this. They figured out that these little robots can actually play 3 different roles in someone's life. Let's break these down. First, the robot can be a personal assistant. It helps with daily tasks, and that tackles that social loneliness we talked about. Second, it can be a relational peer, a partner for fun and games, which helps with both kinds of loneliness. And finally, for some users, it becomes a true intimate buddy, creating a genuine emotional bond that directly fights back against that deep, aching, emotional loneliness.
So the evidence is really promising, and we're starting to understand how it all works. But as you can imagine, this technology also raises some huge questions about the future. Where exactly are we headed with all of this? And we have to be really realistic here. As exciting as all these findings are, companion robots are not some magic bullet. They're not a simple one-size-fits-all cure. The reality of loneliness is it's way more complex than that. And it's really important to talk about the limitations of this research, right? This big study was done in Japan, where people are generally pretty positive about robots. The participants were almost all women. We still have no idea what the long-term effects are. And, maybe most important of all, the researchers see this as a potential supplement to human connection, not a replacement for it.
Which leaves us with this final, really powerful question to think about. We are literally building machines that can give us comfort, that can encourage us, that can ease our deepest feelings of being alone. As this technology gets better and becomes a deeper part of our emotional lives, we're going to have to rethink one of our most basic ideas. What will it truly mean to be a friend?